The House is at the 11th order. The House will now have under consideration House Bill 34.
Mr. Speaker,
Good gentleman from District 4.
I ask unanimous consent that further reading of this bill be suspended.
You've all heard the request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the gentleman from District 4 has the floor to open debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is brought on behalf of the Speech and Hearing Services Licensure Board. The board regulates and licenses 3 separate professions: hearing aid dealers and fitters, audiologists, and speech-language pathologists. The board is an independent board served by the Idaho Bureau of Occupational Licenses. This bill does 2 separate things. First of all, it changes rules regarding consent. Quorum for the licensure board meetings. And the second thing it does is it updates educational qualifications required for an audiologist license, so one of the 3 areas of board oversight. What it does is it changes to conform with the current accredited educational programs available, which is currently limited to doctoral degree programs here in Idaho, and that's a national standard as well. The bill also clarifies that only practicum experience obtained as part of the doctoral degree program is necessary. Since master's programs in audiology are no longer available, this update will not affect currently enrolled students, including those in Idaho. And those with masters already will be grandfathered in. So there's been no opposition to the bill. It is unopposed and passed unanimously through the Health and Welfare Committee. I ask for your support on this bill. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Good gentleman from District 15.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the good gentleman yield to a question?
Will the gentleman yield?
I will.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good gentleman. I'm just doing a little looking on the internet, and it looks like there are 32 states that still allow audiology licensing with a master's degree. Was that discussed in the committee at all?
It was not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To debate against the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the type of bill that we see here frequently that's termed as a housekeeping bill, and it may be, but it has an economic impact. Frequently we see various restrictions on licensing come through, and I'm concerned about any time we change licensing requirements because it affects the marketplace. We are currently concerned about having access to specialists in rural areas. By changing this requirement, we preclude people who may be in the pipeline. We preclude options for people who may want to practice audiology but can't afford to go through a PhD degree. It seems like we're always progressively restricting professional degrees. And so there's potentially an impact. Now, I don't have all of the information on audiologists, and I don't know what programs are out there, but I know that at least from if I might refer Mr. Speaker to a website that I'm looking at.
Without objection,
the
the
U.S.
gentleman
News,
may refer.
excuse me, U.S. News University Directory, which is a fairly up-to-date compilation of professional degrees. U.S. News does summaries every year of schooling comparisons, and it indicates that 38 states allow licensure for master's degrees for audiology, with master's degrees from audiology. 18 require a doctorate. There's a number of programs listed here. It says explore master's degrees in audiology programs online. Now, I'm concerned maybe and I don't know, I'm not casting any aspersions here about the reason for this, but whenever we see licensing issues here, whether it's contractors, whether it's naturopaths, whether it's a number of different professions that I've seen here over the years, there's always a concern about a monopoly. We have a balance between trying to make sure that the training is adequate, but on the other hand, not excluding qualified people. This particular licensing program does require a state exam. So to me, if somebody can pass the state exam, whether they have a master's degree or a PhD, we should not exclude that option from our citizens, both those who are seeking to get into the profession and those who are seeking to find an audiologist out in areas that perhaps may be underserved. So at this point in time, I'm going to vote no on this. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Good gentleman from District 16.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from 4 yield to a question?
Will the gentleman yield?
I will.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, good gentleman. I was wondering if you could explain to me why the provision on line 21 that the public member be present in order for there to be a quorum is proposed to be deleted. What the nature of the problem was with public members' attendance and why the public member was deemed somewhat less important, apparently, than the other people who are listed in the statute as being required to be in attendance.
Gentleman from 4.
Thank you. There was no specific instance of a problem with the public member being present that was brought during committee. However, I believe the concern was that given the highly technical nature of what this board is dealing with, and given that that business needs to move on, if that quorum were not be able to met because that public member perhaps didn't understand the importance of the meeting, that business could continue for the board.
Thank you.
Is there further debate? Hearing good lady from District 8.
Did I get it? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Loud and clear, good lady. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't anticipate a whole lot of debate on this, but I will tell you that my seatmate has made an excellent point. I think we might, down the road, find some underservice issues for rural, and if you don't know it yet, I am rural. So I would be, and the other question raised was a very good one too. This may be a little bit premature, so I will be opposing the bill.
Good gentleman from District 27.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good ladies and gentlemen of the body, I just spoke with Roger Hales, who is in charge of the Occupational Licensing Board. The state statute in Idaho requires that schools be nationally accredited for licensure or to be in position to be licensed in the state of Idaho. The national accrediting body only recognizes PhD programs at this point in time. Yes, there are 32 states that have masters in audiology, but they are not recognized by the national accrediting body as being accredited for audiology. And Idaho statute requires only accredited schools that you can apply to. So this is nothing but an update, and it is truly a housekeeping bill for previous Idaho statutes. So the master's degree programs are not accredited by the national accrediting body and therefore are not capable of being licensed in the state of Idaho. I hope that clears up some of the issues here. Thank you.
Is there further debate? For what purpose does a good lady from District 8 rise?
Mr. Speaker, if it's appropriate, I would like to make an inquiry of the gentleman who just spoke.
Will the gentleman from District 27 yield to a question?
Gentleman yields.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess I would have to wonder why, and maybe it was presented in the opening and I missed it. Why doesn't the National Board want to credit the master's degree program anymore?
Very good
The
question.
gentleman from 27.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very good question, good lady. And I think this strikes to the heart of exactly what is happening. A good number of years ago, you could graduate from medical school and you did not have to do an internship, nor did you have to do a residency, and you could actually go and practice medicine. Some years after that, the knowledge base in medicine expanded to the point to where you had to serve an internship before you could get a license to practice medicine. In the last number of years, 15 to 20 years ago, the field of medicine and all the specialties have done away with internships, and now a residency is required before you can go practice medicine. The knowledge base in medicine and its related fields is doubling at the rate of about every 5 years at this point in time. So the fact is that longer and longer periods of time are being required to educate people in the fields of medicine and other affiliated disciplines associated with healthcare. And the National Accrediting Body now feels that to have an adequate knowledge base to go out and serve the public, that a PhD or the equivalent thereof is required in audiology. It is no longer sufficient for public safety and for your knowledge base in audiology to actually just have a master's degree. And that is the reason, good lady, for the increase in educational requirements.
Is there further debate? Good lady
Thank-
from District 8.
Thank you, gentlemen. I guess I'm still, Mr. Speaker, a little bit.
Good lady, it's appropriate for you to ask another question, but you can't debate a second time until everyone else has a chance.
He also serves who stands and waits. Thank you.
Is there further debate for the first time? The gentleman from District 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman from District 4 stand for question?
Will the gentleman yield?
I will.
The gentleman yields.
Good gentleman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Was there any indication as to whether those with a master's degree would be grandfathered in, or do they all have to now upgrade their education?
Gentleman from 4.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, there is going to be a clause there is contemplated that those with masters, those who are currently licensed as audiologists, can continue with that licensure.
Mr. Speaker, follow up?
Would the gentleman yield further?
I will.
The gentleman will yield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good gentleman, it sounds as though this will be taken care of by rules in support of this statute. Is that correct?
Gentleman from 4.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to need some
Would the gentleman from District...
clarification on the antecedent to this.
Would the gentleman from 2 clarify his question,
Yes,
please?
Mr. Speaker, if I may. Does it spell out in the statute that the master's degree would indeed be grandfathered in to keep their audio license?
Gentleman from 4.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not positive whether that would be through the rules promulgated directly by the administrative agency, but that was the discussion that was had during the committee, is that those who are currently licensed could continue with that licensure.
Mr. Speaker, one more follow-up, please.
Will the gentleman yield further?
I will.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman yields.
Good gentleman, is there any indication as to the increased safety to the customers or to the clients of these companies that are licensed by requiring this higher education?
Gentleman from 4.
There was no discussion in terms of to specifically answer your question, the question on the floor as to whether or not there were safety issues that were addressed, there were not. However, there was discussion of what is actually going on in terms of the training that is now being incorporated into the doctor's degree or doctorate program that had originally been postmaster's training requirements. So it's all still part of the licensure process, but now it's incorporated into the PhD rather than postmaster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate for the first time? The gentleman from District 14.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the good gentleman from 27 yield to another question, please?
Will the gentleman yield?
Gentleman yields.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you. There seems to be a challenge that we're facing here in terms of the weighing this higher standard, and as a result impacting our ability to provide all audiologists, thank you, versus this issue of accreditation. Now, clearly, in these 38 plus other states, I'm assuming they're all going to either have to change their rule or lose their accreditation as well. As we weigh this out, we obviously have a need in Idaho for doctors, particularly in the rural setting. Does that need perhaps outweigh losing our accreditation at this point, and then perhaps in the future looking to have this requirement, but in the short term trying to meet the immediate need of providing this service, particularly in our rural settings?
Gentleman from District 27.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good gentleman, I'm not sure of the shortage of audiologists per se, and I think that's what we're talking about. To my knowledge, that has not come up as an issue, a shortage of audiologists. I do know that all of the current practicing audiologists with a master's degree will be grandfathered in, so there will not be any disruption of the current services of audiology. But again, I think this good gentleman just reflects the increasing complexity of educational requirements to provide a service to the general public. And I appreciate everybody's concern about cost, et cetera. But by the same token, the highest priority of all of us is public safety and the ability to make sure that when we do render a service for the public, that we do it, that every practitioner of whatever art does that to the best of their ability, and if increased educational requirements are necessary, then I think we have to default to patient safety above all else.
Is there further debate?
Mr. Chairman.
Good gentleman from District 23.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would the gentleman from 4 yield to a question?
Will the gentleman from District 4 yield to a question?
I will.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman from 4, on the part where it says 4 members of the board shall constitute a quorum, and it crosses out the public member. The public member, even though that is crossed out there, is still a member of the board, is he not?
Correct.
Gentleman from District 4.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. That is correct.
A follow-up question, Mr. Chairman.
Will the gentleman from District 4 yield to another question?
I will.
The gentleman yields.
When a meeting is requested, are all members of the board notified concurrently so that they all know and have plenty of time to get there?
The gentleman from 4.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman from 23, I believe that, and this was not specifically discussed in committee, however, it would be my understanding that, yes, the members of the board are notified prior to the meeting so that they are able to make arrangements for attending that meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I speak to the bill?
The gentleman has the floor to debate for the first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry.
The gentleman has the floor.
This part concerns me, that we can convene a quorum without the public member, even though the public member is part of the board. I'm not sure if we really want to do that, because that's an aspect of the board that should be heard nearly every time. And so I'm pondering on that just a little bit. Thank you.
Is there further debate? The gentleman from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just quickly to add a couple of things. This board has 7 members. 3 are speech and language pathologists, 2 are audiologists, 1 is a hearing aid fitter and dealer, and 1 is a public member. As I recall the testimony in committee, it was such that absent of the public member would eliminate the possibility of this board meeting, and it met infrequently. So it could be a long time between dealing with issues of license, both as discipline and an approval of license. The other thing I'd bring to the body's attention is that this was brought not by Roger Hale and not by the staff, but by the board itself, the board that sits and says what are adequate credentials for the protection of public safety. And I think they deserve some credence in our deliberations. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Is there debate for the second time? Hearing none, would the good gentleman care to close debate?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I would.
Gentleman has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to reiterate one more time there was no acrimony from within the industry in bringing this bill from the licensure board to the legislature to update language to match what's already happening within our state. This is a self-regulating industry, highly specialized industry, and they brought this bill to us and are asking for us to update our code so that we can be accurate in terms of what we're asking of a industry that's already regulating itself. There's a difference between a top-down regulatory scheme and what's being asked of here. This is coming from below, and I would warn against the sort of myopic legislative narcissism that we fight here on a daily basis, wherein a legislative body believes it knows what's best for an independent, self-regulating body, not by nature of fact that's been brought before them, but by the nature of our title as a legislative body. Our job is to champion the rule of law, to make sure that law is relevant, up to date, and not to take pot shots, if you will, at realities and that are properly beyond our scope of powers.
Mr. Speaker, I'd object to the argument.
Please state your objection.
I think it's divisive. It's not going to the debate issues.
Will the gentleman keep his, I would rule that terms like narcissistic, pot shots might fall into the gentleman's objection. So if the gentleman will close the debate, make your points and close the debate.
All right. I think I've made my point. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The debate is closed. The question is, shall House Bill 34 pass the House? The clerk will unlock the roll and the members will record their votes. Has every member voted?
Eskridge.
Representative Eskridge votes aye. The clerk will lock the roll and the...
Okay, we got it. That's good.
Has every member voted?
Yes.
Does any member wish to change their vote? The clerk will lock the roll and record the vote. The roll call shows 37 aye, 30 nay, 3 absent and excused. House Bill 34 has passed the House. Is there a correction to title? Hearing none, House Bill 34 will be transmitted to the Senate.